What's up, guys? This is episode number 3 of the Backseat podcast. I'm your host, Mike Goodman. Today I'm going to be switching it up a little bit. I'm still going to be talking about Survivor, but I'm going to take the majority of this episode to discuss the events that occurred at the second Tribal Council. And for those who aren't familiar, I'll basically break it down and then discuss it a little bit more in depth. So the Tribal Council was split into 2 parts. The first Tribal Council began, and Roxroy ended up getting voted off. So Roxroy and Chanel are on the jury. As the other castaways come into the Tribal Council, they see Roxroy sitting on the jury next to Chanel. And a lot of them were very shocked, completely shocked. And Drea just seemed to have a different look in her eye. We later come to understand that Drea was completely caught off guard seeing 2 African Americans sitting on the jury. It really just clicked in her head that this was the time in the game where the minorities start to get voted off one by one. And it has happened before, and it very much was going to happen that Tribal Council. Drea was the target, and even if you disagree with what she was saying, how she was saying it, you can't disagree with her thought process because she was completely correct. So Drea starts to talk exactly about why she's so upset, and it starts to rub Jonathan the wrong way. You can see that he's starting to get very defensive. He's trying to explain to her that he's not racist. He loves everybody. And we know that from Jonathan. It's not like everybody went into this Tribal Council thinking that Jonathan was this terrible racist guy. Of course, that's not what was happening, but he took the route that a lot of white people take in this situation, and he immediately jumped on defense. That isn't how the conversation was going. That's not what the women were saying. They were looking for allies, people to listen. And that's, as white people, that's all we can do in this situation. We don't know the experience of black people. And we have to stop trying to say, like, oh, well, my parents got divorced when I was younger. I know what hardship is. It's so completely different. And as a white person, in the past, I have taken a very similar route to Jonathan, unfortunately, and I've learned that it is obviously incorrect. As soon as I saw him jump up and say, Drea, you're being aggressive, and I'm not a racist, I cringed so hard because I had been there in the past. I've done that before. And of course, now I understand that that is so wrong and the opposite of what he should have been doing. As somebody who doesn't understand the struggle of an African American, we cannot take a stance on the situation. As a viewer, you can have any opinion that you like. That's basically the point. That's why there are cameras. Survivor is a game. It's a microcosm of the real world. So many people have said it over the past couple of days, but it's so true. It is basically taking the real world, everybody around the world, around the United States at least, and Canada, and putting them into a group and seeing how they interact. It's a social experiment at its core. If you want to listen to the happy-go-lucky things and escape politics and all I hear about is racism, watch a different show. This is not the point of Survivor. And I timed it on my phone. I really did. The Tribal Council was 10 minutes. If 10 minutes of Tribal Council was so taxing that you're just not watching Survivor anymore, I just can't do it. I'm so tired of all this, race that. These women have been dealing with this their entire life. If you can't sit there and just listen to it for 10 minutes, appreciate their struggle, see the very real emotions that they're feeling, and not have empathy, I don't really know what to tell you. That's part of the problem. We have to learn as a community, as white activists, to just sit and listen. We don't need to talk. Jonathan didn't need to open his mouth and say, hey, I'm not racist. Nobody was saying you're racist, Jonathan. All they were saying is this happens subconsciously. It's how it goes sometimes. And Drea was simply not going to let it happen. So Drea and Marianne both did a wonderful job explaining exactly what they were feeling, and both women are ready to play their hidden immunity idols. So at this point in the episode, Drea and Marianne both end up playing their hidden immunity idols, and they stand up in unison and go present it to Jeff. That was such a powerful moment. That was incredible. That was one of my favorite Survivor moments of all time. And watching them stand up, take off 2 strong black women, approaching Jeff Probst, giving him the idols, and saying, there's nothing you can do about it. We're staying today. It was, I have no words. Jeff takes a different approach and says, you know what? Why do we have to do all I think he says pomp and circumstance. I don't really know what that means. I know it's the song that plays at graduation. But he basically says we can skip all the BS. Let's just get down to it. Who's going home? Tori is the one that gets selected by the majority of the group, and she's like, okay, well, I'll play my shot in the dark. Let's see what happens. So she goes up to the booth, plays her shot in the dark. Lindsay does not. And basically, if the shot in the dark is safe, then Lindsay goes home. If it's not safe, then Tori's gone. And Tori is not safe, so Tori ends up getting the boot. Basically, the real brunt of what I wanted to discuss and what I really wanted to get across to a lot of my viewers. I don't know. I mean, a lot of my viewers, there's like 6 of you, so thank you for sticking around. But I wanted to say, I at least wanted to express my opinion and my experiences leading to a tribal council like this. The emotion that I saw from those 2 women were so real. It was one of my favorite tribal councils that I've seen in years. And that's saying something. I've seen every episode of Survivor, and that tribal council was so different because the conversation that was had was organic. There weren't leading questions getting these women to talk about race. This wasn't forced. This was very real emotions coming out all at once. And to see all of the different sides, Lindsay and Tori basically just staying off to the side, listening. Lindsay even having their back, saying, I hear where you're coming from. I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't think that you're being aggressive. I don't think that this is coming from a place of, white guilt. She's just listening, and she heard, and she knew that they needed a little extra help, so she was there to give them that help. We can't avoid social injustice, and we can't escape it. This is the real world. These are real people. If you want to escape it, watch like Young Sheldon. I don't know. But this is not the show. This is not the game to watch if you want to get away from real world issues, because these are real people having very real experiences and reacting exactly how they would outside of the game. Now, that being said, I understand this one is a little bit shorter than my others, but I think that this is probably the most important video that I've made thus far. I'm excited to make some more. Next week is probably going to be a little bit more similar to what you saw in episode 2, but I just really needed to get that off my chest. I wanted to make sure that you guys heard exactly where I was coming from, and if you don't hear it anywhere else, I wanted you to hear it from me, because that is my genuine reaction, and that is exactly what I had to say, and I'm happy that I had the chance to express it on this platform. Like I said, even if it's 5 or 6 people listening, if I was able to improve your understanding of the situation even a little bit, then it was completely worth it for me. Thank you all very much for sticking around. This was the Backseat Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Goodman. I will see you next week for some more Survivor content.
Peace.